Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're thrilled to welcome to the program from Daily Faceoff and TSN 690. He is the man behind the coach's room. Jon Goyens joins us on the program. Jon, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you making time for us. You did a great breakdown. We've been tweeting about it, so we had to bring you on to talk about it. A great breakdown of the Winnipeg Jets so far this season, and some of what they're doing on the ice and how that's translating into success. And we'll let you sort of delve deeper into it, Jon. But from my perspective, if I had to sum it up, sort of in a quick little pithy phrase, I would say controlled aggression is leading to success for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, aggression comes in different forms. It's not about just putting people in the fourth row of the stands and ripping people's heads off and stuff like that. There are ways to be aggressive, just in how you close gaps, how you defend, how quickly you get pucks, but also how you protect pucks and make plays with a ton of poise. I think, the other rhetoric we hear from a lot of coaches, the two main things that stick out when a coach gets hired: we want to be the toughest team to play against, right? I mean, ad nauseum, I think if we all had a quarter, we'd all be billionaires. Right? And then the other one now for probably the last 8 or so years is we want to play fast. And the thing is at times you could see teams where there is no context to any of those types of buzz terminology. There is none, and you don't see it in their identity. And it just lacks a lot of connective tissue from what was being presented in press conference to how they're actually playing, because playing fast without poise is a chicken with his head cut off. You're not making plays. You're playing fast. But what does that mean? Does that mean physical speed? Because at the end of the day, I look at it as, and I've talked about it with several people smarter than I am, like a Craig Button, for example. And I remember we bounced this idea around, was that, everybody says the players shouldn't think out there. And in fact, it's the development of technology, like your iPads, your phones, your computers, is the processor gets faster, which means what it sees, or what it's, get the input that's coming in, they're able to process it that much quicker and react. But they don't react in panic. And that's the thing I'm seeing, especially on the Winnipeg Jets power play.
Jon, how important do you think it is to have so many interchangeable, talented players like the Jets have that can play in the bumper spot or move to the half wall and create motion? And obviously Gabe Vilardi, we know that he likes to set up his office. His office he doesn't have to set it up. It's just there along the goal line. But how important is that? Because a lot of the focus was, Ehlers in the bumper position. And you mentioned on the Daily Faceoff breakdown with Tyler and Frank, Braden Point, right, who's one of the best in the league at it. And Nikolai Ehlers said earlier in the season that, he wasn't familiar with playing that spot, but he would. It seems like to have Ehlers that can go in that position, or Mark Scheifele go in that position, I mean, it just keeps the opposition on their toes. And early on, I mean, the results speak for themselves, right?
Yeah, and besides keeping guys on their toes, the other part is like, look, there's 4 of us. Let's say we just add a 5th player. Well, if Dave is supposed to be the bumper guy, but he recovers the puck in the corner, and I'm supposed to be the half wall guy, do I go up to Dave and say, give me the puck and go back to your spot? You've just wasted 8-12 seconds opportunities, where it's like there's always an action-reaction in this game. So if Dave is in a spot reacting to a loose puck and he recovers, it's that next what? Now what? It's like, well, if I see the pocket of space and I'm, Dave is in that corner and I'm a righty and the net's here and I could fill that pocket, maybe we could get that quick strike. And it's all that I think sometimes we really just trying to force these guys to play robotic hockey, like X marks the spot, you stand here, and we're taking away all the instincts, and the instincts are what extracts the talent. It's not the other way around. It's not X's and O's that extract the talent and the skill level. So if we trust that the players understand the game plan and the concepts behind, say, a power play, and one of the major areas is create as many quick 2-on-1s as possible, under handle pucks. We talk about Tampa. I've done other breakdowns where and I mentioned it in the Jets breakdown, is underhandling pucks. Like the last year, New Jersey struggled on the power play because they would stick handle 45 times for every one pass. Whereas if you can actually have more passes per stick handle in a sequence, your opportunities open up quicker and with a higher level of quality. And if you can have that, plus interchanging players, understanding like, oh, I'm in Drew's spot. Okay, that's fine. Drew's going to go to another spot, and then the guys can move around.
It was usually the bench for me.
Yeah, but now you're letting the players make reads based on the instincts, allowing their processors to go, we see this is the output. And by doing that, you're speeding up how quickly you can create opportunities to score. And that's why I like to use that stopwatch element in my video breakdown, was even at 5-on-5, is how quickly they really act on a loose puck or at 5-on-5 on a breakout 200 feet away, and they go with that quick strike mentality. So they truly have context associated with one of the biggest buzz terms in hockey, which is playing fast.
John, one of the things that I find interesting is that this Jets team is largely the same as what we saw last year. And yet last year, their power play was mid-pack at, bottom third, and their PK was atrocious. Whereas now, obviously, small sample size, power play top of the league, and the PK is in the middle. How long does it take, especially, like I said, with the same group, two new assistant coaches who are getting a chance from under Scott Arniel to kind of put their own stamp on this team? But how long does it take for a team to really adapt? Can it be done in a training camp and then, really take effect as we're seeing right now?
Well, you got to wonder, with the fact that there wasn't a ton of turnover, you know that the best coaches at the highest levels are communicating with their top dogs in the off season. I think we'll start with there. So I'm not going to pretend to know was Arniel or Marty Johnson or one of these guys, or putting out video and trying to get input. I think one of the biggest misses a lot of times is going in at the highest levels, junior, college, and just going in and going, we're doing this, do what you're told. No, like, you're at the highest levels. It's, here's the plan, here are the pre-scouts, this is what I've seen around the league in terms of trends. What do you guys see? Because I'm telling you, Montreal, it took them a long time last year, a long time to realize that Monahan belonged in the bumper. And you guys know that as well as anybody, that the Montreal Canadiens power play did this, which is what made Monahan such a prized possession before the trade deadline, and what it did for the Winnipeg Jets power play.
Right.
And so there's an element of, you've got to create a partnership with these players. It's not like you just let them, here's the marker, here's the video, do what you want, but it's, let's create a partnership. I've done my work as the coach to present you facts, opportunities. What do you guys see? Then in turn, they participate in that discussion. They've got to come with tangible ideas. Now they feel like they have ownership. So when they aren't pulling their weight, it's them letting go of their ownership, as opposed to, the coach coming down hard on them. So now there's a pride element, like, we own this power play. And I feel that that's what I'm seeing from the Jets. I don't know any of the behind the scenes, but they just seem, and again, this isn't against Bones or anybody else, but right now it just seems that maybe there's been some internal conversations about, getting them to have a little bit of input, because for years we know what the power play was. And Kyle Connor's played several positions over the years with the Jets. But now it's like, is Kyle Connor coming down on the left side? Is he on his 1T side? Is Scheifele in the bumper? I mean, Wheeler was on this side. Like, it was at times too predictable. Mm-hmm. Now what it is the other part, and this is a term that I don't know if I've really come up with it, but I talk about absence of bumper. Right? So you see Edmonton does it. You'll see Nugent Hopkins in the bumper. He pulls out of the bumper. You see Draisaitl goes into a really low bumper. He pulls out. And depending on the PKs, because the diamonds, a lot of times they are trying to nullify any passes to the bumper. Well, if the bumper isn't there, guess what? He's probably dropped down and he's created a 2-on-1 down low, which is a key component. So that's what I'm also seeing. There's a lot of the examples I put in the video breakdown where there is no bumper. They're there for support, and then you go play a little hide and go seek, and then all of a sudden you move to another spot and you see them 3 down low. Well, how's a PK with 1D probably at net front because they're playing a diamond, for example? How are they going to box out or battle against 3 guys? So I think that there has been some sort of connection with the players to get a little bit more input, to pull out the instincts, let them have some ownership over it, because it's now, is it sustainable? It's not going to be this sustainable. That's for sure. Just like, do I think Buffalo 0% is sustainable? No, I don't think so. Do I think Edmonton staying in the bottom 3 of the league is just no? But last year also Detroit came out like a house on fire on the power play, and they did something that a lot of teams weren't considering. They were going back with 2 defensemen on their top power play, but a key for them was absent of bumper. They were underhandling pucks. They were moving pucks really, really quickly so that they could strike as often as possible. And I always kind of say is you strike, you recover, you repeat. You possess, and then you repeat. And at times when the quick strike isn't there, then you go to the possession mentality to create that strike, recover, repeat. And right now the Jets are really good at recovering pucks as well.
Well, so let's talk about recovering pucks, because you're right. It's one thing to sort of get the clean zone entry, and the Jets have been pretty good at that as of late, especially when you have a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, who's a human zone entry. Kyle Connor, 5-on-4, pretty adept at getting zone entry as well. But the recovery of the pucks, what are you seeing that the Jets is making the Jets so successful at that aspect of the power play?
Well, there's not one of these like, where did it go? Oh, there it is. Like it's really, again, going back to that processor. Like they process the game. It's almost like it's becoming a little predictable. If a shot's coming from which it is a lot at times. Like I learned a long time ago from a Craig Ramsey is, let's say a right shot at 5-on-5 flying down the wing, and he's on the right side, right shot,
left side,
right? So so if you're someone that's on the ice on that line mate, and he's going to go with the big clap bomb, go to the weak side boards, right? Go to the weak side boards. You're keeping that puck in, and then you can create something. So there's a certain amount of, they're making just great reads that seem predictable to them. That's so they're quick on pucks. Even if the PK is maybe even slightly ahead of them, they're closing that. And then it's how everybody else reacts. So if they win a battle, they could almost blindly rim it behind the net to the weak side because they know they have an outlet. At times, if they're being squeezed on the boards, they have a guy just behind them where they can blindly pop it into a pocket of space, which again creates that quick strike. So it starts a lot of times with that lowest man, whether it be a Velarde, whether it be who's on the second one net front. I'm trying to think. I know Iafalo's around.
Nino Niederreiter.
Nino Niederreiter, right? Yeah. So these are guys with wide frames. Let's call it the way it is. Low, big butts, the big, right? Like the hockey frame, they get low and they protect that puck, but they know that they're going to get it, not to dangle out of the corner. They know they're going to be under pressure. It's how quickly they can rim release, pop it into a space, but if need be, hold on to it until they have support.
Yeah, John, I just wanted to stick on the power play here for a second, because obviously, this has been a hot button topic here for not just a couple years, going back many years with, Nikolai Ehlers not getting enough first power play ice time. And I wanted to ask you as a coach, how hard is that for the opposition when basically there's not a real drop off from the first power play unit to the second power play unit? Obviously, the talent is higher with Scheifele and Connor and Ehlers on the top power play unit, but Nino Niederreiter, ask these guys, like before the Jets acquired Nino Niederreiter, he was a guy that I was saying, obviously, I just throw out guys all the time, Dave, and John, and I get lucky once in a while, but Niederreiter just has been such a perfect fit because not only has he been great at even strength with Lowry and Appleton, but he goes out there on the second power play unit and he scored against Seattle. It didn't count as a power play goal, but for all intents and purposes, 3 seconds had passed since the power play expired. So it was really a power play goal if you want to, really get technical here. But it just seems like a guy like Niederreiter, Neil Pionk on the back end, like they're just how I guess long-winded answer. Sorry, John here, but I've had a little bit of coffee to drink. But how hard is that for the opposition when you can put out a second power play unit that's just as dangerous as the first power play unit.
Well, it's tough because in the, everybody talks about matchups, and the thing with matchups, it's not what it used to be. However, as a PK, you get that opportunity, right? So power play is getting called. The referee tells the power play, what side do you want the face off? And then they go to the PK team. All right, you got to send your boys. And typically you see, okay, we're starting on that side. Typically you're getting the first PK unit. But the reality is some teams, if they don't have that luxury, because right now they're basically getting 50% of their power play goals from both units.
Yep.
Right? Each. I'm looking at Ottawa numbers. I'm looking at other teams, and it's more like 70-30, 80-20, 90-10. It's not typically that evenly distributed. So what that does is, let's say those top dogs on the first unit, let's say they just had a shift. Maybe they got dragged out, and what do most teams do? They're like, well, shit, we got a first power play. We got to send the first power play unit, and they might be half in the bag. Well, this goes, we can send the freshest unit. That's number one. We could send the freshest unit physically and mentally on every first face-off for a power play. That's a huge help. But the fact that now they are scoring at basically an equal pace, now there becomes also a bit of an internal competition, a healthy competition. Because if the first power play doesn't go like, oh man, we gotta drag this out. We gotta drag this out. And they're not. They're going out there 55, 60 seconds. They're not going 90 seconds, 80 seconds, because they know, hey, we got to trust those guys because they're doing just a good enough job. And if PP2 starts, it's not going to be like, coach, what the hell are you doing? It's going to be like, oh man, like this is where we're at. It's a luxury. It's a luxury. Now, will it stay 50-50? I doubt it. You mentioned Neil Pionk. I was raving about Neil Pionk in that breakdown. He's consistently that 35-point D-man. I think if he continues on this pace, he could push for 45, but he also underhandles pucks. He skates really well. He doesn't overcomplicate things. He's got that great sifter of a wrist shot through crowds. And when you have two units like that, even if at the end of the year it's 65-35, that's a massive, massive luxury to have. Look around the league where some teams, their first power play unit might even have more talent than Buffalo. I mean, look at Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo 2 years ago was top 10 in the league. Last year, it was like absolutely dropped. And now they're starting the year at 0%. I went through this as a coach when I went to Baie-Comeau. They had a lot of guys that wanted to stand in one spot. They just wanted to stand in one spot. I wanted movement. We started with 8% in the first 15 games. We went through analytics. I consulted with an analytics person. We looked at the video, said, guys, we're almost there. The next 50 games, we were over 30%. But you needed that buy-in a little bit as well. But the thing is what is sustainable, what isn't? But I never had that luxury of having – the last time I had that luxury, I was coaching the Lac St. Louis Lions, my last year midget AAA, and 6 of those guys were drafted in the NHL. So that's a hell of a luxury to have, and the Jets have it right now.
That was what I was going to ask you, John, is do players want movement on the power play, or do they prefer more of the stationary setup? Like, do you have to get buy-in from players to have that free-flowing approach, as you just referenced with your time in Baie-Comeau?
I think they've got to understand, it's know when to hold them, know when to fold them. There's times when you need movement, and there's times where you could be maybe a little bit more static. The reality is too many of these young players, male and female, have been turned into robots from the young ages of Adam Pee-wee Bantam. I see it today, and it's X marks the spot, and Drew has to be here, and Dave has to be here, or else. And it's a putrid way of developing young hockey players. It drives me absolutely bananas. And so when, let's say, the guys would come to midget AAA, we would get guys to play all kinds of positions. We'd have guys that were dominant provincially at their age level to play different spots, to play net front. Well, I'm a half wall guy. Good. I didn't see that on your birth certificate anywhere. So guess what? I had one player he's playing at RPI right now. He was very much like a Kyle Connor.
I hope not like a Drew.
No. And he was like, and when I showed him at that time where Connor would play net front, and goal line, and then sometimes end up on the flank. And he was like, you know what, coach, now I see it. I'm in. And it was like little things like that where you can't just ram it down their throat. You got to come up with tangible examples. Now you go to Baie-Comeau. They had a big year the year before. Now they're static. Nathan Legare had scored 40 goals in his draft year, and he wanted to play the Ovechkin spot. Well, as we've seen, Washington, I'm not talking about this year, and I'm not even talking about the second half of last year, but for about 2.5 years, that power play dropped dramatically because you shade over to one guy, and if Backstrom's not in the lineup, then Kuznetsov is not as relevant anymore because they don't have their exchanges. Then Oshie, you can't get Oshie open up as much, and their power play dropped dramatically. So there has to be, you got to practice, and you got to say, we're okay with the power play not putting up big numbers early and often. Just trust that there's times that we're going to have to get a movement. You're going to have to be on your forehand sides coming downhill. You're going to have to be on your 1T sides. We could have one guy on his forehand, one guy, like you've got to work through it. But I think one of the biggest hindrances is from Adam, Pee-wee, Bantam, Midget, and even Junior. We turn power plays into robotic systems versus letting these guys extract their talent through instinctual reads and having a good pre-scout.
Really good insight there, John. And I just have a quick question for you in terms of what your thought process is in terms of using high-end guys on the PK. Like there was a lot of talk in training camp, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, they were going to be used on the PK. Not so much so far early in the season, but just from your perspective, how, first of all, is that a tough sell to get guys like that to say, listen, we're going to need you to play in this role? And also, what is your thought process on using high-end guys like that in a PK?
Well, I think that there's definitely a balance right off the bat. So if your team is undisciplined in a particular night, or typically an undisciplined team, and you take 3, 4, 5 penalties, and you're not a team where your skill guys play a lot of power play, penalty killing, they could rot on the bench. There's that element, right? Now they're getting pissed. They're just sitting there and now again, it depends on the depth of your forward group. So can you start with your Lowrys, for example, and I guess Appletons and guys like that, and then say the last 20 seconds, get Scheifele over the boards, get Connor over the boards, because you're out against a tired power play, and you're probably out against the second power play unit, or you're even up against the power play unit going, oh man, let's get off. We got to go to 5-on-5 soon. And you catch them in a bad line change. The other element is really good offensive players can instinctually know, oh, I know what that guy wants to try. So they could like bait them by putting their stick here, but boom, they cut it off over here. So again, you got to know your group. I did a Colorado breakdown last year, and they had the, when they got Trennan and Duhaime and guys like that, and they filled their bottom 6, it allowed them to alleviate and take a bunch of time away from McKinnon, Rantanen, guys like that. And I remember doing, I think it was about 5 out of their top 6 forwards or 4 out of their top 6 forwards average 0 to 6 seconds of PK per game in a stretch where they really got hot in the second half of the year, which gave them a lot more, fuel in the tank. So I think it can be a game-to-game basis, but I think that talented players who have, really fast and quick processors with great instincts should be used on the PK, but also you don't want to overtax them. You see it with some teams in the NHL, a guy is first PK, you see it on defense, blah, 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 blah. And what happens by the third period, they're making silly mistakes they otherwise wouldn't use. So in there is a balance, but I think those top guys always have to be ready to PK, because you might be late in a game, you might be down by 1 and you got a PK, but you might also need a goal. You're not just going to throw a guy over and he has no clue what to do.
John, just one last question for you here, and it's not, I know we're a Jets show, but this isn't a Jets-related question, but we mentioned you were the head coach of Baie-Comeau and obviously Cape Breton as well, and I wanted to ask you about Ivan, who I saw is the first player to ever have the same first name and last name in the NHL, but obviously you coached him and you had a part in his development. I mean, how nice was that to see him score his first NHL goal for the Avs?
Well, it's awesome. And it's awesome in the scenario that it's in, right? With the Avs having so many injuries up front. And funny enough, another former player, plays on that power play unit, which is Jonathan Drouin. And here goes Ivan, and I know his agent quite well. Ivy was, he was a guy who came in his first year in Cape Breton when I was actually in Baie-Comeau, and they had a loaded team. So he wasn't getting many offensive, like a lot of power play. Definitely wasn't getting PK. Then COVID hit. He didn't come back over for a bit, and then he came back over. They were the worst team in the CHL. We went in there, and like the guy eats, breathes hockey, eats, breathes training, doesn't take a day off. And, there were some things that I wanted to help him open up. And one of the things was PK. And so it kind of lends itself to a highly skilled guy playing PK. Mm-hmm. But then when we went to power play, here's a guy who was always playing the same spot, and always shooting the same way. And after a while, it was like, no, let's get you here. Let's get you there. Let's get you interchangeable. And it was really cool to see, because he started on the fourth line. And he started seeing him play in different, more responsibility, if you will. And considering where Colorado started those first 4 or 5 games, and now where they're trending, and to see him score a power play goal assisted by Nathan McKinnon, that's a really cool feeling for him. I texted him, told him I was proud of him, and just keep doing what you're doing. But here's an undrafted player who skates really well. He's got some solid instincts. And I think a lot of teams might kick themselves here in the next year or two that they didn't take a swing at him.
Okay, John, as he said the last question, but he's lying, because I've got one more for you.
I have too much to talk about with you, John.
Well, no, but this is not Jets related, but it is tied to the Manitoba Moose, of course, because former Moose coach Pascal Vincent, who is now the head coach in Laval, his hometown. You, of course, cover the Laval Rocket. They're 4-1 to start the season. How is the former Jets assistant coach, Moose head coach, doing with Laval?
He's got them playing, we go back to what we started talking about, playing fast. He's got them playing really fast. You should see their power play right now. These guys are moving the puck around. There's not that much body movement, like player movement, but the way these guys are zipping the puck around, our play-by-play guy, Sean Campbell, who also does the Montreal Alouettes, he didn't do the first home game the week before, and I warned him. I said, watch, you're going to see. And then the first power play came up last night, and it was like, bang. It was like 3 chances in 13 seconds. Goes down the other way, and he's got them playing fast. He has them defending quickly. It's still a very young team. They had some nice pickups, guys that I didn't really know, Zach Hayes and guys like that on defense. But he has them playing really connected in all facets of the game. Their power play numbers are up. Their PK numbers are way up. Again, small sample size, but so far he's got these guys playing on their toes. And, even from last night, they were up 3-0. They let Utica crawl back, make it 4-3. You could tell, like, I look at the bench. What's one thing I like to do as a color analyst is look at the coaches' reactions on certain things. And I mentioned it. I go, well, Pascal's got to have several teachable moments here for video sessions, whether it be as a team or certain young guys. But that's what he is at heart. He is a teacher, and he's going to take that time with those players, and they're just going to get better, and they're going to benefit from his experience.
Jon Goyens is a Habs and Rocket analyst on TSN 690, does great video breakdown in the coach's room for Daily Face-Off. John, appreciate your time. Appreciate that great insight into the Winnipeg Jets. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Have a great rest of your Saturday.
Have a great weekend, guys. Thanks for having me.
Take care, John. Thanks so much. There he goes. That was a great guest, great insight. I saw somebody in the chat say they were going to go back and listen to that clip, that segment 3 or 4 times as he broke down so much of the good that's happening with the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have that available for you. It's in the podcast. It'll be in the immediate replay on YouTube. Great insight from Jon Goyens about the Winnipeg Jets and a lot of their success so far this season.